Growing up in Long Branch was not my choice, but after my dad retired from the Coast Guard, he got an apartment in Long Branch, and then finally saved up for a house on Atlantic Avenue, about a block from the ocean. I remember going to school, North Long Branch School. I remember the kids there. I remember like the mix of people was, we had like one Jewish student, we had one black student, and then we had 20% Italian people, 20% Polish people. Everybody else was, whatever mixed background usually Americans are. But my parents were my dad was in World War II, and my mom was a World War II bride. Very, very loyal. Growing up in North Long Branch was different than growing up in Long Branch. We were a fish town, and we had less money than people from Long Branch. But it was okay. It was okay. We had the beach, we had the boats, we had, I remember, had anything I wanted to do outdoors. And I got used to learning how to do things outdoors. There were several events during that time. This was a time when, I don't know if you've ever heard the term, but we used to call people from up north, we used to call them Bennies. And that word comes from Bayonne, Elizabeth, and Newark. Okay? And they'd come down, of course, we would take advantage of them, whatever we could do, because they always had more money than we did. At the shore, there was only a couple companies you could work for. There weren't that much industry there, so it was tough to make a living. But eventually, a lot of those people, welders and workers who were first-generation immigrants, moved down to Long Branch, and it changed the whole face. This was 1967. This was during the riots that they had in Newark, and it was a whole different element of people. There were a lot of hate. There were a lot of prejudice, really bad. Which we didn't feel it down there before. Our town was always split up into sections. There was Fishtown, where I lived, North Long Branch, and we were mostly like Protestant, Scandinavian background. Then there was the Polish, that was the middle of Long Branch. And then the Italian part of it was West Long Branch. The Jewish part was Elbron, that was the north part. The black part was Liberty Street, and everybody had their own sections, and everybody knew everybody, and it was cool. But when those people came from North Jersey, especially from Newark, they were bad. I saw them do things to people that were just cruel, just plain cruel. The most important thing I remember when I went to high school is the most impressive person wasn't the smartest person. It was who was the worst badass or the best badass, the one who could fight the best. And I'll never forget one time where Cartier, this badass, came in. He comes in with like a Duke of Earl cape into a high school basketball game, and he struts in with his whole clad behind him, looking and waiting for somebody to pick a fight or something like that. But back then, fighting was important. There were literally organized fights, where people would stand off and fight each other. With some of them were good at it, but most of the good fighters, one punch was over.
Long Branch in the 1950s was a time of great interest and change. Bob described this time as adventurous. While his family weren't the richest, him and his buddies would always travel around with something to do. His father, a World War II veteran who drove Higgins boats, earned a great reputation around town. We traveled to Manhasset Park, where you can find the infamous Trafford Field, named after Bob's father. While Bob's childhood was full of adventure, he admits to struggling in high school.
My school experience was extremely negative. I think I was part of the population of baby boomers. So we had split sessions. We would go to school in the morning as freshmen and sophomores, and then in the afternoon as juniors and seniors later on, because they had over 5,000 or 6,000 kids in a school that was set up for about half that many. Actually, right out of high school, I got a job for $1.56 an hour as a draftsman. because since I hadn't played sports, I had gone to Monmouth County Vocational School 3 hours every morning for my last 3 years in high school, and that qualified me for a job at $1.56 an hour as a draftsman, which is a job that doesn't even exist today. But my father thought it was a good idea, and I think my father might be a little on the cheap side and wanted to get out and pay for college. I got a little frustrated. I saw a lot of people, they were moving to the military during the Vietnam War. I was only 19 or so. I wasn't that. And my father said, take the Coast Guard test, see what you could do. So I went to New York and I took a Coast Guard test with like 18 or 20 other people. But the test was a different kind of test that I had in high school. Everything was multiple choice. And I aced it. As a matter of fact, I ended up in the top couple of people, and they picked 3 or 4 of us out of the 18 to go to what they call sonar school. And I went to sonar school, I aced that, and the other 4 kids that were in sonar school with me were, I don't know, you could call them draft dodgers. They joined the Coast Guard to get out of getting drafted. I didn't even know about that. I was younger, 3 or 4 years younger, but they had 2 or 3 years of college. But for some reason, when I didn't compare myself, but I started realizing, hey, Bob, you're not that stupid. You're not stupid. Maybe if you just listen and pay attention, you could be smart. So I started to do things there that would help me. So the first thing I did was, I think it was during pistol shooting week of boot camp in the Coast Guard. I listened to the instructions, and out of 1,500 people, there was 2 of us that shot expert, and I had never shot before. But I was impressed by that. I was impressed by sonar school that I went to after that. I went to sonar school in Virginia, and then I was put on a ship. I hated being on a ship. I hate the water, even though I've been around the water all my life. Ships are no fun. I don't think they're any fun at all. They're just maintenance all the time. Once I got out of the Coast Guard, active duty, I went back to my old job as a draftsman, but they didn't save it for me, so I got another job in the same company, EAI, as in the art area, but it was boring. It wasn't good. Eventually, I made friends with some of the engineers there. There were 18 engineers there, and they were doing simulation, and they needed some help on some digital programming. Back in the day, this was early on, when we would write programs in Fortran and COBOL and all those old languages. Well, for some funny reason, I started to study programming, and it just took to me. And I could ace everything. I could do the programs. 6, I think, of the 18 engineers were PhDs. And I could do the programming of the digital stuff way better than they could. And the reason that they needed digital was because we had analog computers back in the day. And the analog computers to do the simulation, for example, simulate brakes on a truck, simulate different things that they have to study and get the math out of. Well, in order to feed the parameters, they had to use a digital computer to feed those parameters in. Anyway, I turned out that I was very, very good at that, and I made a living at that all my life. I started a company based on some products that I had developed along the way. The company went for 30 years, and we sold it about 4 years ago, and it worked out real good for me. One of the hobbies that I picked up, or hobby you could call it, along the way was car racing, and I was very ambitious. I think I had a partner in 1968, and we threw a car together real fast. We had some people that would help us learn how to weld, but that obsessed me for 10 years. Even though I worked as a programmer, of course, it afforded me enough money to do engines and pay for that racing hobby. But it was more of a racing. It was more of a hobby than anything else. We raced at Flemington Speedway. We raced at Nazareth Speedway. Probably about 20 tracks within a 100-mile radius of this area. Later on, when I got a little bit of extra money, making my money, I was able to partner up with a fellow named John Godfrey in a company that we called Spike Chassis, and we started to manufacture sprint and midget race cars, which are obviously a staple part of American racing these days. And that was quite an exciting hobby. To this day, I still stay close to that, and I have those friends. And when I watch TV, I actually know some of the people that are racing because of my background. About 3 years after I started U.S. Technologies, the company that I ran for 30 years, I got into a really bad car crash. What had happened was my son was coming home from his freshman year of college. He said, and we decided we'd go sailing in Round Valley. And he said, "Dad, can I drive? Can I drive?" We drove. We got off the highway to get gas. And somehow some little girl was looking at her phone and had a head-on collision with our car. None of us had seatbelts on. My younger son, Rodney, was in the middle, and he ended up with a concussion. I ended up with a fractured femur and a concussion, but my oldest son, Robert, was crushed in the driver's seat and took him 2 years to recover and had to skip a whole year of college because of that.
While some would say this event would serve as a tragedy, it was actually the opposite for Bob's son, or my uncle, Rodney. Rodney described this incident as a blessing in disguise, as his hospital trip revealed a complication with his heart. With these news, Rodney avoided a life of medical defect, but was told he could never play football ever again. However, Rodney soon healed and continued a star-studded career, first at Del Barton and then at the University of South Carolina.
The very next play, that's Petty to redshirt senior Rod Trafford. The game winner, USC beats Alabama for the first time, 37-36. The Gamecock faithful rushed the field.
After retirement, I had a few extra dollars, and I hadn't owned a house in a while, but decided to purchase a house, a cheap little house, but I wanted to be on the river because I love the river. The river means that when I look out the window every day, something changes. I know there's a change out there. And when I got the house, it was a bit run down. Didn't even have gas. I had to put gas in it from the gas company. It had electric heat, which was very expensive. I did that, put a deck on the back, built 2 docks on the river, and all that took a couple of years, and it worked out real good. If I was standing in a luxury resort, okay, I would still want to be here in my backyard, in my house. My views from my windows in the morning with the wildlife that I see is amazing. It's hard to top. And I'm in New Jersey. After I got most of the things built that I wanted to here, I started fooling around with some other things. So I put a zip line up for the kids, and 250 foot. We got it working pretty darn good. Kids had quite a few thrills from the zip line. And then we were at the museum, and I spotted the first submarine ever built, the Holland 1. And I said, gee whiz, that'd make a nice model. My grandson and I had already built a model submarine while I was working. We built it out of PVC. And it was quite plain, but it took several months to do it. And actually it helped him to get into the Naval Academy, believe it or not. But the second submarine was going to be serious. It was, I hope you'll see a picture of it somewhere. But the submarine is amazing. It's the Holland 1, and it's the first submarine that was purchased by the Navy in, I think, 1901 or 1900.